this can be a governance process sometimes. This can be an information sharing process, but it's about how do you make sure that teams are gathering, sharing what they've learned, and having a chance to pick up the things that work best and scale them across the organization. So back to Waze again. So Waze is a great example of a company that puts so many of these different things together. As we said, Waze tells people where and how to go. It has live real-time traffic prediction, and so there's no top-down control, right? Everybody just drives wherever they need to go, and the system processes it all and makes sense out of it. And when Google acquired Waze a couple of years ago, and when they did, in the public press statement, they said that they described what was so interesting and valuable to Google about Waze was the community. It was the network. The software underneath it was actually, that was nice to have, but the network of drivers is what made it so powerful. And maybe next year, maybe right now, certainly 5 or 10 years from now, all this data that is being generated by drivers, by users of Waze, is going to be part of the brains inside of one of Google's self-driving cars that's going to be driving us all around. So this is how we're kind of wrapping it up at Undercurrent. Right now, we've identified these traits, and we look at them kind of across the really basic aspects of any organization. Any organization has a purpose, has people, has process, has products, and has some kind of platform, maybe in a very nascent stage. And then we see how these traits exhibit themselves, or how strong they are within those different aspects of the company. So this is a survey tool that we've developed that we are now using with a lot of our clients, with other companies that we have startups that we have a relationship with through our ventures firm, and we're really at the early stages of this, but it's already pointing us towards some really interesting new ways of operating for some of our clients. So with that, thank you very much, and I would love to take any questions that you have for me. Yeah, we've got one here. Do you have a mic? Thank you.
Just wondering if you see this applying to wireless carrier and their business models, or any kind of network. We're always seeing mesh networks.
Yeah.
Google's talking about these balloons they're going to launch. I mean, the carrier model has sort of worked for a while, but now we're seeing some technological advances that could change that. Do you see them having to shift?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as the carrier business model goes, it's the buying connectivity seems like a relatively robust product or service, and will continue to be for some time, at least for the near foreseeable future. But I do look at things like Google with something like Project Loon. Facebook is also playing around with similar drone-enabled connectivity. They certainly would be interested in making access freely accessible. And then it's not hard to imagine that Apple, for instance, doesn't really care about the carriers at all, right? And if it was easy to be connected through an iPhone anywhere at any time without going through a carrier, Apple, I'm sure, would be totally fine with that. Yeah, in the middle there. Thanks.
One of the prerequisitions was embrace uncertainty.
Yes.
But if you look at the average person, and even at the average society, uncertainty is not accepted. If you want to buy a house, your bank say, what can you tell me about your history?
Yeah.
do you have a permanent job? Oh, I have a job for 3 months, okay, then go to the next door. So, how does that fit?
It's very, very difficult. Embracing uncertainty, especially in big corporate environments, it really goes against our human nature. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. But I think the best way to fight it is just the shorter the feedback cycles are, the easier it is to kind of let go of that feeling. So, for instance, if you're like a manager or an executive at a company and a team or a person comes to you and says, I want to do this big crazy thing that I think is going to be awesome, it's going to make us $1 billion. If they're saying, give me $10 million to go invest in it and give me 5 years, you probably be very anxious about the uncertainty that goes along with that, right? But on the other hand, if they say, give me $1,000 in a week to go and test something and then report back to you what I learned and whether or not we should move forward, you're much more comfortable with that level of uncertainty. So it's all about that time and how fast you can learn.
We have a question in the front here, Mike.
This is partly a follow-up on the question you just answered. I'd like all your thoughts about some of the counterintuitive stuff that works best in terms of productivity and that sort of thing. And large companies, I'm not necessarily identifying Ericsson here, I stress, don't necessarily follow this stuff. So I'm wondering why you think a lot of this good advice isn't followed by large companies. Is it just a matter of size, inertia?
Yeah, so I mean, there are decades of kind of organizational inertia working against this, and so many of the models that run most large corporations, they were created, they were designed for a different time. And GE is a great example. Their famous Six Sigma process is really primarily focused on perfection and driving consistency and reliability across all of their products, right? So if now they need to shift to a model where nothing is ever finished and nothing is ever perfect, and they always need to learn and that's very hard for them to wrap their heads around, but they're working on it. And what's driving the change in the companies that are willing to change is that they realize that they have to. There's no other choice for them.
We have time for a final question here. Okay, and then maybe, we have one in the front here. Thank you.
So, how do you see the pitch-start innovation in the way companies and in this, as it seems that it's quite focused in the Silicon Valley in the United States. So how do you see Europe's position in this?
Yeah, so certainly in the tech space, that there are tech companies in Europe. Spotify is a great example of one that are as much leaders as any of the Silicon Valley based companies. And as far as the more non-tech, it's not an accident that the tech companies are leading this, because they kind of get it at a very intuitive level and have been operating this way since day one. It's a lot harder when you're shifting towards this from something else. So I expect that we will see more and more of it popping up in more and more places. And there are companies, Safaricom in Africa, I think is a fantastic example of what they've been doing with mobile payments and their move. First of all, just what they did in mobile payments was a very disruptive and innovative move to begin with. And then on top of it, I think it was early this year, maybe end of last year, they opened up that platform so that other telecom companies could also use it, and users could exchange money back and forth regardless of which carrier they were on. So that's a great example of a company doing innovative things in this way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you very much.
So that really takes us through